A Chinese AI app has surged to the top of Apple's App Store, causing the tech sector to crash on Wall Street today. DeepSeek, a chatbot app similar to OpenAI's ChatGPT and Meta AI, has pummeled stocks today, causing massive sell-offs that puts tech stocks on track to lose $1 trillion. Joining us now is the Hill's technology reporter, Miranda Nazzarro, with more. Miranda, thanks so much for joining us. Let's start with Nvidia, which was up over 100% in the past year because of the AI surge. That's already down 12% today. What stocks have been impacted the most so far?
Right. So obviously, Nvidia is the largest player. They are the most valuable company in the world, and seeing their stock drop by 12% is incredibly important to be looking at, but they weren't the only ones. Meta AI, as you had just mentioned, they dropped about 3.5%. Same thing with Google, or Google's parent company, Alphabet. And the key thing here between these companies is they are all involved in the AI development process. For Nvidia, it's their powerful chips that actually power AI development and maintenance. But for Meta, Meta has their own AI models that they are working on, as well as Google. Just last week, Mark Zuckerberg, Meta's CEO, said that he would be investing 60 to 65 billion into the AI development process at Meta. So this definitely is not a great, at least initial sign for these leading companies.
And let me ask you, what do we know about the Chinese AI app DeepSeek, and how exactly does it differ from those other apps you're talking about, like ChatGPT and Meta AI?
Yeah, it's relatively very new. The company itself was just founded in May of 2023, which the fact that they are even able to launch something this apparently advanced in just about over a year is pretty remarkable. And the app is also a reasoning model like ChatGPT. So in plain language, that means you can give it prompts and it will give you answers back. It will make things for you, etc. And the newest model, which they call R1, that's what came out last week. And that's what's kind of sending these shockwaves, is that it is pretty comparable to OpenAI, which, like the other companies, has invested billions and billions into AI infrastructure. But the thing about DeepSeek is that they're doing it at a small fraction of the cost. It costs them, or so they claim, it costs them about $5.6 million, which is kind of opening up a whole new ballgame of, can we actually make AI to the quality of stuff like OpenAI without spending billions?
And DeepSeek's rise is coming just days after President Trump had announced that $500 billion venture with OpenAI, SoftBank, and Oracle. Will this cause a massive shakeup to that investment project?
So the timing is very notable. To say that it will have any immediate impact is a little unclear. While we are seeing a stock market shift, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to stay in the long term. Obviously, the stock market can be very volatile. This surge over the weekend, it might be a temporary surge. Now, that said, I think it's important to note up to $500 billion is a lot of money. And again, we are now asking ourselves questions of, can we actually run and produce AI without spending that sheer amount of money? So even if it doesn't change immediately, we could start to see doubts in the amount of money that is being spent by these companies. And in turn, we could see more effect in the stock market. Some companies may decide they want to pull back how much they're spending because they're getting criticism for how much it is. So it's opening up kind of a new can of worms, but I think it's too early to say whether the actual project will have any impact. I mean, they've already started building in Texas. So it's already underway. Now, could it be stopped at any second? I assume so, but I think it's too early.
Right, and the U.S. has curbed exports of advanced semiconductors to China, but the move hasn't appeared to prevent an AI startup from DeepSeek like developing this AI app. Will we see stricter regulations on China at any time in an attempt to stunt the company's influence here in the States?
Yeah, well, the Biden administration, which was really big on cutting chips, as you mentioned, trying to curtail because they believe chips, like the ones made by Nvidia, are the key central part of actually powering these AI companies, or I'm sorry, this AI development. Now, DeepSeek is proving that you might not need these chips that were once thought to be a very vital part of the process. Now, again, it's unclear exactly if they use these chips because there is certain sanctions in place. They might have. There's reports swirling that they might not just be able to talk about it. So I think could see further restrictions, but I think the government is going to have to start to look at alternative restrictions because clearly the curtailing of chips is not stopping companies. And I think that's what's particularly concerning for Silicon Valley is they thought that the US and the US government had such a grip on these semiconductor chips that they thought they'd be safe from a lot of this, but it's very clear that chips are not the end all be all.
All right, Miranda Nazzarro, really interesting stuff. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
And last week, Reverend Bishop Mariann Budde made national headlines after pleading to President Trump during an inaugural prayer service.
In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives.
That sermon brought anger and criticism from Trump supporters and even Trump himself. Today, The Hill's White House correspondent Alex Gangitano sat down with Bishop Mariann Budde. Alex, thanks so much for joining us. She spoke to you about the backlash she received. Let's take a listen, then we'll dive in.
This is what we've been preaching all along. This is not news, right? The fact that it became news, again, I think is reflective of the country.
And Alex, has the backlash gotten worse? Because the bishop had said that some people had wished her dead. What else did she tell you today?
Yeah, it was a really interesting interview. And when I asked, has the backlash that's negative outweighed some of the positive, or have you been getting equally positive backlash? Or response, she basically said that she's not on social media. She doesn't want to consume all of the responses she's getting because, she has a job to do and it is kind of overwhelming in this moment. But when you focus on the criticism that she's seen, you mentioned from President Trump, from Republican lawmakers, and of course from other, Trump supporters and critics of her, she's basically a double down on the fact that speaking about the need for mercy is a solid Christian tenet. This is something that she feels is part of her values and should be considered a straightforward plea. It's something she's been preaching for a long time, as you saw in that clip. But she did say that the issue is that if that's perceived as a resistance to Trump, that speaks to the larger issue that we're living in this culture of contempt right now.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Did she say she's worried about her safety at all?
Yeah, so I asked about that because also there was a congressman last week who said that maybe she should be deported. And so, all of this public criticism, I asked her how she's feeling in this moment, if she's feeling safe and secure. And of course, she told me that she has a lot of support around her and that she feels very well supported. But so she's far less concerned about her safety than she is about the safety of other people in this country.
And Alex, there's a resolution in the House to condemn Budde. What's that legislation's chances of clearing the chamber?
Yeah, so it looks like it is likely to pass. Of course, we know we have a Republican majority, and that just also is part of the larger picture of this criticism against her. As you and I have talked about, this all seems to be piling on, but when it comes down to actually speaking with people who disagree with her, she's welcoming a face-to-face dialogue, where we see, movements in the House to do things to condemn her. But she's saying if there's anyone who disagrees with me and not through a social media platform, but on a face-to-face level, wants to talk things out about what my values are and why I did what I did, she'd be welcome. She said the door is always open to that kind of access with politicians and particularly with the Trump administration.
Yeah, Alex, sort of on that note, before we go, you spoke to Budde about the apology that Trump has demanded. I want to first play what she said and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
People have asked if I feel like I should apologize, and that would be apologizing for my understanding of the teachings of Jesus, and I just can't do that. So no, I can't go there right now. Otherwise, because I really haven't had time to. But I regret the reaction, but in the sense that it's an example of the very thing I was talking that we needed to address, which is the culture of contempt and the outrage that is fueled in our country.
So it doesn't sound like there's any apology coming anytime soon.
That's right. She was definitely firm in that, saying she will not be apologizing, and that this again it just goes to her understanding of the teachings of the church, and she is not sorry for that, but she does regret how some of this has been perceived and what kind of this snowball effect out of it has been.
All right, Alex Gangitano, great interview. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Michael.
Shifting gears, areas in Southern California that are already ravaged by wildfires are now bracing for mudslides and flooding, with the first significant rainstorm hitting the state this season. News Nation correspondent Nancy Liu is on the ground in Los Angeles with the latest.
Well, the rain has eased up, but the threat of mudslides continues here in Southern California, especially in the recent burn zones. There you can see some of the sandbags hoping to protect the roadways and really what's left here in the Palisades. Over an inch of rain has soaked the Los Angeles area over the past 48 hours. It's the first measurable precipitation in nearly 9 months. As feared, the rain triggered some flash flooding and mudslides, and a number of motorists required emergency tows after getting stuck in the mud. There's also now concern of possible ash flows, toxic ash, and debris. Meantime, lawsuits continue to pile up against SoCal Edison over the alleged cause of the Eaton fire. In the latest court filing, video evidence of what's claimed to be arcs and sparking of a transmission line on January 7th, and then the apparent start of the Eaton fire just minutes later. Driven by hurricane-force winds, the fire wiped out much of Altadena. Multiple residents have also offered video evidence of flames at the base of that transmission tower. SoCal Edison tells News Nation experts are reviewing the video and any conclusions are premature. Now, the cause of the Palisades fire remains under investigation. However, these rains in recent days, that has helped with the firefight. The Eaton fire and the Palisades fire are now almost both fully contained. Back to you.
News Nation's Nancy Liu, thank you. And one of Trump's orders catching a lot of attention is the declassification of the assassination files for John F. Kennedy, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and Robert F. Kennedy. In today's Political Minute, News Nation chief Washington correspondent and host of The Hill, Blake Berman, lays out the process for declassifying assassination records from over 50 years ago.
Making history about history. I'm Blake Berman, host of The Hill on News Nation. In his first week of office, President Trump signed a series of executive orders, many focusing on energy and the border. But the latest is centered around decades-old questions. The president ordering documents on the assassinations of John F. Kennedy, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and Robert F. Kennedy to be declassified. Specifically, the order instructs the Director of National Intelligence to present a plan within 15 days for the full release of all JFK assassination records, and to present a plan for the complete release on the records of Dr. King and RFK within 45 days. But keep in mind, the president's pick to be the next Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, still hasn't been confirmed by the Senate. Her hearing is scheduled for next week. I'm Blake Berman, and this is the News Nation Political Minute.
You can find more news and analysis from Blake and our colleagues 24/7 on News Nation. To find News Nation on your screen, go to joinnn.com. And that's all for today's Daily Debrief. I'm Mychael Schnell. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel, and come back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy.